Okay, welcome. I'm just going to look at this tile RPG kind of project that I've built with Pranee McKinlay. We may never release the game, but I really wanted to finish it because we've done a lot of work on it, and there's lots that I liked about it. So I'll just load it up here. It's called The Age of Nothing. I just wanted to look through how the project works. It's built in Game Salad, which is an engine that I kind of learnt programming with. There's the title screen. There's the little hero and their cat. So yeah, I learnt a lot making it, programming it. Pranee did most of the art in it. We both did a bunch of the writing in it. So you can see there's this cutscene system. And yeah, so I just wanted to step through how these systems work, and a little bit about the project. Some of it's pretty sort of rudimentary. It's sort of a homage to an old game I really liked as a kid called Fantasy, spelt with a PH, that came out in 1985. My family had an old PC computer in the 80s. And I really liked that game. It was just like a tile RPG game. So this is sort of a cute fairy tale, kids sort of a book version of that type of a gameplay experience. So there's a whole system for sort of standing on squares and that triggering cutscenes which result in, say, conversations or things happening. So you live here with Orgothol, your grandpapa, on this little island, sort of away from the world. And he's mysteriously out sort of talking to an owl when you wake up in the morning, and he sort of shunts you off to fetch him some wormwood. And then the owl's flown off as well. So we start off in our little house here. I'm going to take a look more at the map, building tools, and the spreadsheets and things that contain some of the information that like pop up these readables. In fact, I'll just launch into it and go through these things while it's running. So for example, we're at a square here that's triggered this readable about the fire crackles in the hearth. One of your earliest memories is curling up by the fire here with your cat Piccolo. So the way that works is, let's just go here. Now this is not what we want. Let's have a look at let's go to, these are all tables that have different functions with the game. So here's readables locations. Maybe what I should look at first is the map. So basically we used tiled to make the map for the game. Originally we were just using a spreadsheet because when we export this, each of these tiles has a name which is just the file name, and if it's got an underscore it's an animated tile, and it's got frame 1 and frame 2. And when the engine detects if there's an underscore, there's an animation timer and it just toggles between the two. So some of the coins glint with a 2-frame animation, the ocean moves with a 2-frame animation, things like that. And when you output it, you export to CSV, which was actually a feature that I think Björn it is, who makes Tiled, added for me because I requested it, which was brilliant because I couldn't have used Tiled without that. So at that point we were able to start mapping, and Pranee did most of this map and most of these tiles and everything. And so you could actually see what was on the map instead of just dealing with sort of colored tiles with words in them. Because the way the engine works, I'll just zoom in here to give a sense of what this looks like. Here's a little bit of the map. What that exports is, let's just get back to the start. It just exports this, so it's just a table full of all the file names. So water underscore, long rushes, beach sand, etc., mountain grass. And these actually do a lot of things in the game, like when you stand on one, it also uses these names to check whether you can go there, like you're not allowed to walk out onto water. That acts as a sort of a blocker. If the name has the word wall in it, you can't move onto it. If you're on a boat, you can move into the water, but you can't move onto land. And there's also some keywords like teleporter, which causes a teleport, and it'll look up on a table of teleports where to send the player to with an XY coordinate. So yeah, we used to do the map like this, and these were all blue water tiles and mountains were all a certain color, but it was pretty bad compared to good old tiled, where you can see it exactly and have a more artistic hand about where you place things, like this. That's very artistic. So that's how the map works. And when you stand on a tile, it checks a bunch of things. It looks at the keywords in those maps, and it also does things like it uses this revealed table to record ones if you can see the land, and zeros if you can't. So I'll just give you a look at that. So for example, Grandpa has asked us to go and get the herb page. Now the game's running a bit slow because I'm recording with QuickTime. Let's dash up here and get this herb page. Collect wormwood. You can also collect these apples. It's really running quite slowly. It runs a lot smoother than this normally. Grandpa's in by the fire. So when we got the herb page, it also performed some changes that put them in by the fire and made that quest spot active. You can title down here. He's told us to go and get the wormwood via the boat. Now we're outside, so you can see this is not revealed, and if I move over here, we reveal more of the map. We can't collect these herbs yet because we sort of don't have the herb page to identify them, but if we go in his little gardening shed out the back here, we can grab this herb page, and now we know what skullcap looks like, so we can collect it, and that also gives us XP, which gives us a way to sort of get experience without just fighting monsters. One of the emphases of this game was to not have to fight monsters, so you can actually run away from them. There were intentions to even sort of charm them or befriend them and things like that, but in the process of finishing off the game, I kind of just kept it simple and had it that you could fight them or run away, and you still get experience from running away, but just not as much as fighting them, so it's sort of a risk-reward thing. Yep, we can collect herb pages now, and I've also got an ecology system which defines areas that can grow herbs back. So for example, it can look in this area, and if it picks a random tile within a certain area, may as well bring that up now too. There's this ecology spreadsheet. It defines these areas and it goes through them sort of occasionally while the game's running, and they're just my notes, they don't actually do anything. It defines this rectangle on the map, and it will, if it finds grass in that square that it happens to sample, it'll place one of these there. So this is a wormwood grower, this is a horsetail herb grower, this is a skullcap grower. They're actually all the same. I was going to maybe vary those. I also had the idea that you could spread fire or spread some sort of disease or murk this way, but I didn't end up putting that in. But that's how that works. I like those sort of simulation ecology systems. There we go, that's growing back just while we were away. So that's pretty cool. You can also go to these shrines and save the game. This has popped up a readable telling you how saves work. That's saving. And if you die, you can load, and if you go away from the game and come back, you can load, and it just saves everything. It saves all the what part of the map was revealed, and everything about the quest states and everything. Basically, it just saves the tables and loads the tables up again. So you can, normally you can zoom around quite rapidly. Now we're in a boat. This is our little boat that Grandpapa keeps out the back. You can duck up here. You can explore all around on this map. There's a bunch of sort of optional exploring you can do to find more herbs and stuff. So there's the wormwood. I'm going to grab the wormwood. Time to take it back to Grandpa. Now what happens when you go on a quest tile like that is, it's a little complex. Let's just have a look what we've got here. This is also, you can level up if you have enough XP and gold. That's the training cost and the XP cost. Get rid of that. That records what map tiles you've revealed. They're all the creatures you can encounter. There. Okay, so the quest variables, basically these are all the quests that are in the game, and this is the way that I record the state of the quest and also some sort of sub variables. So these all start off as 0 when the game starts, and I sort of increment them and save them and check against them and change them during the quest events. So for example, Grandpapa wants wormwood. He sends you to get wormwood, and basically the quest state can be sort of 0, hasn't started, 1, it's in progress, 2, or 1, it's been offered, but I don't usually use that state, 2, it's in progress, and 3, it's completed. And there's some like these are basically just notes for myself to remind me what I'm using the numbers for. Variables 5, 6, and 7, I call them that just to remind. It's easier to remember because that's the columns they are. It's actually kind of variable 1, 2, and 3. So there's one that records if you've got the wormwood, one that records if you've been given the dagger, which he gives you when you bring the wormwood back. So this one just records as a pirate quest. They want you to go and get these mushrooms from a cave they're scared to go into. So this one records whether you've got the mushroom, and this one records the actual quest state. And so there's a variety of things about this medallion and this letter of sea passage and various things. So that's how that works, and here are the quest event locations. So for example, if we start off sort of down here, here we go, wormwood, perfect. So if you stand on the square on the map, which is 33168, which we can see is down here. Here, see that's, you can see down the bottom here it says 33168. It actually starts at 0, so it's 1 offset. But if you stand on there, then it looks up on this table. Well, it checks every time you move. It goes, oh, they're on row 8. So what 8 does is it checks against the quest event system. The quest event data, and this is probably the biggest and most sort of pertinent table in the entire game, and it's a bit crazy, and it's made me think a lot about how I would build a level editor for a proper RPG game. This system works pretty well, but the interface to it is just very brain heavy. You know, it's very difficult to work in. And it did the job, but because GameSalad's not a very object-oriented engine, it's all kind of pretty brute force and a bit old school. But anyway, what you do is, so what it does is it looks up 8, and 8 basically belongs to this chunk of quest event data. And what it does, it's actually fairly logical. It looks up what state the quest's in. So here, when you land on it, if you don't have the wormwood, then this checks the quest variable table. If you don't have the wormwood yet, play this cutscene, which is about picking up the wormwood, and this looks up the cutscene contents. And now this is all of the text. It's just saved as a CSV for the cutscenes, and there's basically, it just has text in it. And sometimes there'll be a specific full screen cutscene image, which is triggered by this word existing. And sometimes it'll have story images, which appear in a little sort of story window in the corner, which are defined by finding this line, in which case it shows this image and then jumps to this text. So it plays that cutscene, plucking the wormwood, and then it performs a variety of quest changes, which are these things. So it can give you health. I think I actually never use that. It can give you gold, change the position of the player, change a map tile on the map. It can actually up you a level, but I don't use that. It can give you experience. It can give you a key. It can change quest variables to change the state of a quest or one of the sub-quest variables. It can give you potions, and I don't think I use it. Oh, yeah, or it can change the actions and items available, such as when Grandpapa gives you a dagger. So those things, it can do up to 10 of them. It could do more, but we only use 10. So this one changes a quest variable, for example. It changes quest 3 value 6 to 1. And this changes some tiles on the map where it's drawing a wooden floorboard, so it's probably because a character's left a location and it just overwrites that tile with a floor. Gives you the dagger, and it sets quest 17, which is the one this one relates to state 3 completed. So next time you stand on that square, it'll use this row 3, to check against, and that is just empty because nothing should happen anymore in that location. So that's an example of how that works. It is a bit of a head muddle to put all these in. It's all very data driven. It's just numbers. So if I was to make a RPG game in Unity, for example, I would be looking to create an interface in the game to show these as all kind of what you see is what you get type of values that link to things in the world, and you can click on them and it'll take you to that object or drag an object into the inspector and, you know, do it much more intuitively. So you're just having sort of fun creating, whereas this was there was a lot of mentally taxing parts of the process, but it works. Now we'll close that. We've talked about that. This is what triggers. Oh, this is the readables. So this works in much the same way. If you stand on a square, it's also always checking, is there a readable there? Normally there's not around here, but if you stand on that one, it goes, oh, they've stood on readable line 52. So it goes here to the readables table and throws up line 52. Line 52, heading into the caves away from home, is just a note to myself, and it says, you murmur to your furry companion, this is the farthest I've ever been away from home. Thank goodness I have you here, Piccolo. You're talking to your cat. It also defines the width and height of the box, but I pretty much always use these same values. And this is a one-off, so it doesn't appear again after you've stood on it once, whereas all of these ones are like repeat. They just pop up every time you stand on it. So that's how that works. This is the teleports table, which works in somewhat of a similar way. This is the teleport data, but what happens is the map tiles themselves, such as this cave, are called dungeon-teleport, and if it's got the word teleport in it, when you stand on it, it knows to look up this table, and the table will be related to this cell. That'll be the cell XY 14144 that was stood on. So it looks up here and goes, okay, we're going to teleport the player to this X location, 158, Y 29, and these numbers are used for these things, which are, it's the X position, the Y position, the music track number, because it's going to change the music if you say jump into a cave or walk into a town. The scouting distance, I don't really use that. What that does, and it does work, is it changes how far you can see. So it will, if you change that to 4 because you're outside or something, it would reveal 4 tiles around the player wherever you go. Whereas if you went into a dark dungeon, you could change it to 2, for example, and it would only reveal 2 tiles in front of the player as you move around. So it's like you're cramped in and dark. That does work, but we ended up just liking the number 3, I think, for everywhere. See, they are set to 1s and 2s, but I think I just leave it at 2 at all times. And there's also a vignette. So the vignette ID will bring in different vignettes, which let's just pull one up over here. Art, UI, vignettes. So the vignettes are just, they overlay over the map, and this is, say you're in a dark dungeon and it's quite dark and you can only see around you. It looks a bit like you're carrying a light source. Outside, it's more like this, where there's just a vignette around the edge to give it a bit of a nice look, but you can basically see quite far. This is another inside one. I only actually use a few of them. but that's quite effective. Yeah, so that's what they work. When you teleport, it sends you to an XY and can change the music and the vignette. Again, there's lots of different tables. It's a little bit painful jumping between them all and looking up XY coordinates and making sure everything's validated, and but it works. Don't save that. What else have we got? There's the map. That's the actual CSV that we import into GameSalad. So that's what the game actually looks at. What the game actually is a whole lot of. These are just a whole grid of tiles which don't move, and they just constrain their own image to the values from the CSV file. So, there's water, sandy beach, grass. There's the herbs. You can jump on and off your boat. What else? So that might be about it. Let's just go back here. We'll close this. Ah, yes, encounters. So what happens is, each time you also move, there's an encounter controller that looks up the tile that you're on and looks it up in this table. Okay, so here's the encounter data. So it will look up these tiles, and on any of these tiles, actually I think only the yellow ones we use, it'll go, oh, there's a chance out of 100 that you will encounter this creature. Now that's just a note because the game actually looks them up from numbers, because computers love numbers. So if you land on a road, there's a 3% chance that you will encounter a bandit, which is row 7. And if you do go into combat, this is the image it puts up in the background of the fight, which are just basically sort of plain colors that suit the brown for the road. And if you have a fight on the long shrubs with a snake, it goes to a sort of a green background. So that's pretty cool. And then these are the actual characters. These are those numbers that I was talking about, like the 7 is a bandit and the snake is a 6. They had descriptions which were maybe going to appear in the game, but they don't. There's a min and a max health, min and a max gold, min and a max XP. The game basically whips up a sort of a randomized version of that monster when you fight one. They've got toughness. They've got how easy it is to flee from them. Some monsters are harder to flee from. There's some values that I didn't use. It sets their size. They have vulnerability to fire and ice potions, and things like this. They also have timings for how long it takes for them to attack, and also some of them are more or less likely to attack you first. So sometimes with a snake, for example, Grandpapa tells you that it's not always wise to fight. Sometimes it's better to run away, pick your battles. So when you come into contact with a snake, often they won't attack you. You'll just stand there on the combat screen, and you can attack them with one of your combat buttons, or you can run away. Let's see if we can pull up a bit of combat here. So, and some monsters are very aggressive and they will attack you. Here we go. So snake, see, they're not attacking us. It's only got 1 health. He's, so he's a friendly little snake. We can run away or attack. So if we attack, we killed them. They didn't have any money. We got some XP. And I think with snakes, you actually get more XP if you run away. There's also, let's take this back to Grandpapa. We're running a bit slow here because we're recording. We can run away. We escaped. We got 5 XP. That's the way to deal with snakes. So, oh look, all of these have grown back. Grab some skull cap. You can see our XP here is increasing as we get the herbs. You can also grab the health, and there's apples that grow on trees as well. We'll go back home. We'll go up here. Oh, what's happening here? Someone's in their house. So a dark stranger has come to town, and they're talking to our Grandpapa, Orgathol, and it's up to the player to sort of figure out the details of the story as they go through. But ultimately, you play your part in helping out. The dark stranger can be a little abrupt. Here's Grandpapa. So he is desperate to go off and help Barthasius, the Dark Stranger, and he says we have to stay home and look after Piccolo, the cat. He gives us a dagger to help in case we get into trouble. And just like that, they were gone. And we're left on our own. So, Piccolo was about before. Our daggers appeared here. Initially I was thinking of making it into an epic RPG with lots of weapons and items and an inventory that you can move things around in, which I actually did kind of have a basic version of working, but I got rid of it. Oh, here's Piccolo. So we give Piccolo a rub on the back. You find a small velvet pouch fastened to her collar. You look inside and find a note in Orgothol's handwriting. It reads, "If trouble comes to the island, or if you decide it is time to act, take the boat to the south and find the caves that go under the ocean to Raven's Breach." Piccolo has been left with a key for us. And so we decide we are going to go off on an adventure, and we say, "Sorry girl, I have to go to Raven's Breach. It's going to be dangerous," and you wonder whether you'll ever see her again. But as you stand to leave, Piccolo leaps up and scrambles into your backpack, disappearing inside. So you decide, yes, Piccolo can come too. We get a key, get back in the boat, we head off on our adventure. So we kind of like the idea that it would start, with this kind of classic adventure, a bit of a kid's book, kind of a tale. Oops, I want that loot. It's also signposts that work with as readables. They pop up the message. There's a door which we couldn't go through until we did get the key from Piccolo. Oh, now here's rats, right? See, they've started attacking us despite us being friendly. Oh, we got the old dagger out on them. Grab this horsetail note. Now we could go back out and collect some horsetail that we couldn't get, but let's not worry. Oh, it's the furthest we've ever been, and we got in a fight at the same time. So off we go. Now we have been wounded a bit, so let's grab this apple. Yoink. And so that's it really. You can keep going. You can get to the very end of the game. There's a full story and a full ending, and it's quite fun. You can finish it in about an hour or so. It gets a bit more open and less linear as you progress. You go to a few different islands. There's some more sort of boat travel and some side quests. And you end up having to sort of sail around a bit more of an expansive area, figuring out sort of how to get people's help and go to different locations. And you also meet various important characters that let you sort of figure out a little bit more about your past. There is a key to find here that we need before we can escape the clutches of this cave, this rat-infested cave. Using the weapons takes up stamina as well. See, so a knife takes up more stamina, but it builds back up over time. It builds back up in real time, which is a bit silly for a turn-based game, but it works okay. I wouldn't do that ultimately, but it was just sort of the way it came out, and does the job. So there's our home island, but we're now come out onto this island, which is the island of Raven's Breach. This is an inn which heals you for gold as you stand on it. We can save here at this shrine. Now that's probably as far as I need to go. There are more enemies. Oh, there's a bandit on the road. Let's have a punch on. He's a big dumb meaner. Now we're out of stamina. Run away. That's the problem with traveling on the roads, is that the bandits seem to hang about on the roads to waylay unfortunate adventurers. So we're in the town of Ravensbreach. We can talk to this guy. Town's in tough times. But he tells you there's an adventurers guild where you can level up if you are ready to do so. Lord Raven is a bit grumpy, but he's in the palace. So we can go around town here. There's an old lady we can talk to. She's sort of a side quest, and her husband's been lost in the sewers. That's the guild, which will heal us, but if we've got enough XP, it'll level us up for gold. There's another cat that Piccolo can talk to. We're in the... this is a guard. He's grumpy. Things aren't so good in this land. And if we go up here, there should be more decorations and things in some of these places, but we talk to him. He's in a bad mood. He's talking about all the things that are wrong with the land, including the goblins. And he gives us a key to go into the goblin den if we would like to go and help, because we said that we might be able to help. So yeah, I think that covers the basics. Maybe we'll just pop out quickly. I'd like to do a full playthrough video of the whole game on an iPad or something, where it runs nice and smooth. So I don't need to go through the whole game. But we'll just go over here. Now this is the alchemist's house. Orgothol told us to go to the alchemist's house because he was going to go and seek the alchemist to see if he could cure the king, because the king is ill in the Northlands, in the Icelands in the north. So we come and talk to him. He says that he couldn't help Orgothol and Barthasius, and we'll have to follow him north, but to do so we'll need to go and seek the hermit, who can give us the letter of sea passage to take us north, because there's sort of a lockdown in Ravensbreach, so people can't come down from the north or go up to the north. So he gives us this medallion to get into the crypt and some fire potions to deal with the undead there. There's a bit of a problem in the land with the undead rising, and also with the king being sick. So we can now get into the crypt, which is back here, but let's call it a day there. So let's stop this and we'll just check that we've covered everything. There's the characters. I think that's it. So there's also, these are all the tiles in the game. There's a variety of places. There's the king who's sick in bed. There's a pirate quest. There's this stone statue in the royal crypt. Yeah, so it's been very educational to make it, and I learnt a lot programming it. This Game Salad program is not always it's easy to use in some ways, but it's also got its limitations, like everything. But I think to make a game of this style it would sort of pay off its debt better in a program like Unity, where you could build some nicer editors and interfaces for the process of creating the content and everything like that. I was just going to stop this and have a little look at the project. Okay, so just have a bit of a look at the project itself. There's basically some scenes. You can also edit the actors, which have the behaviors in them, the code basically, and there's the tables. Now we've looked at most of the tables and how they work. The scenes are basically a splash screen, a game title, credits, and the actual game scene. These aren't really anything. So basically everything happens in the game scene, and the camera jumps between these different parts of the scene or the stage based on what's going on. So this is a cutscene. So if you go to a cutscene, it pops over here. This is where cutscene images appear. You can have text appear here. These are the little story images. Over here, that doesn't do anything. Basically, everything mostly happens here, which is, this is actually set up for the battle. So the player's here, the monster's here. So the enemy actor switches to whichever enemy is from the lookup table and changes its size and its image based on what monster appears. And if you're back in the normal map mode, there's actually something spawns in all the map tiles when the game starts, and they all appear here. And that's like the readable thing there. There's the stats. So that's all pretty straightforward. There are all the possible weapons and things, although we don't actually use the sword. That's the fire and the ice potions. That's about it, really. So, I mean, the bulk of it's really in these actors, and you can assign behaviors with these things. So let's go to home, actors. So basically, this is where everything happens. So let's have a look at, say, the game controller. So the game controller is just running all the time, and as long as the game is not paused, then the animation timers run, and they look kind of like this. Every 0.4 seconds, toggle the animation state between 1 and 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and the images refer to that to get animated frames. There's level ups, which just says it takes care of what your next level up is, and if you're on a castle, which is the sort of the training guilds, it checks if you've got enough money and gold, and if you do, it makes some sounds and levels you up, and also changes the music to winning streak, and takes your gold away, gives you some more level and toughness. So that's how that works. This is healing, which happens on inns and is quite similar to leveling up. Just trades gold for health. There's pickups, so if you're standing on a tile with a chest or coins or apples on it, it performs that result, and also sets a flag to say replace terrain tile now, and that's a separate sort of function, I guess you could call it, which looks up what type of string the terrain is, and if it contains beach, then it swaps beach dash treasure chest for just beach. And so it goes through and gets rid of anything you've picked up and sets it to say grass or beach. And you'll only find these things on a few different tiles, mainly just like sand or grass. Might be another one, but that might be it. So that's pickups. That's the thing that replaces the terrain tiles. This is the quest system that just constantly checks to see if there's a quest number to check against, and if it is, then it goes in here. So this is the big checking logic. It grabs things from a table. Can't quite remember what that's doing. And then it does the checks. And the checks basically result in a sort of a true or a false or a pass or a fail to see whether it plays the pass cutscene and then performs the relevant quest changes listed, or whether it plays the fail cutscene, which is often, it might be nothing, or it might be someone reminds you of what you're doing. So you'll go back to the alchemist to follow up on the quest he's given you, and if you haven't actually met the quest, he'll go like, oh, remember, you should be going to do this thing, and so that often they're reminders, but there's different ways of using them. These are all the checks. So this one's a check that checks if your level is high enough, and basically they all return a 1 or a 0 for a pass or a fail, and at the end of all of the checks, if pass or fail equals 1, play cutscene. So that will line up, it'll grab the data from that quest event data table and decide what cutscene to play, and it also says it sets like there's 10 changes left to invoke, and then iterates through them doing all those different changes listed in the spreadsheet. If you don't pass the check, it plays the fail cutscene, but only if it's above 0. There's a type 0 and a type 2. There was going to be sort of a type 1 as well, but it's like if it's type 2, it'll play the cutscene, a fail cutscene. If it's 0, then it just doesn't do anything at all. So that's basically how that whole quest system works with those checks and changes system. So that was educational to do that, because I would kind of use the same type of logic if writing a new sort of quest system. It really is based on these checks and changes, or something like that. And that's invoking a cutscene. So there's rules for teleporting if you land on a teleport tile that looks up that table, and there's also some cheats. So that's the game controller. There's also an encounter controller that just does like what I said. It's sort of, if you stand on a tile, it looks up to see if its name is in the encounter spreadsheet, and if it is, it calculates out of that percentage chance, did you have an encounter, and then it throws you over to the fight state, which will move the camera. It'll set up a fight and have a fight happen. What else? Attribute loader sort of gets everything set up at the start of the game, and also I think handles saving and loading. This is a monster. They've got just info about loading themselves in from the table. I think they generate them themselves in terms of coming up with their random XP. Like, it figures out which row it is and then does a random version of that creature type. This guy's pretty cool. And then there's sort of a bunch of timing and logic rules about when do they attack, when do you attack. You sort of take turns, and they also pop up text to show whether they've just taken damage or died, etc. The action buttons are the things that appear down the side of a combat screen, and this basically just contains rules about sort of if you've tapped it, then perform that action. And there's also sort of a cooldown system of if the stamina's too low, it'll grey out, you can't press it, and there's the stamina, just sort of how much it uses up when you touch it. And yeah, that just performs the relevant move, which is actually, I think that is another table I didn't look at. I think that actually contains the relevant sort of attack damage and rules and things. What else? There's save and load. They're basically saving and loading tables. So the thing with the tables is there's actually versions like there's the map tiles default, but there's also the saved version, which is the one you saved last. Oh, and the live version. Yeah, so the live one's the one being used. So when the game first starts up, it uses all the defaults. And when you save it, it's saved. And then the live version's the one that's like being changed during runtime. There's the ecology system, which is that actor that it's currently based on a timer, and I similar to the stamina system, I would probably change that to being turn-based instead of time-based, because you can just leave the game running and herbs will be growing all the time, even when you're not moving. So you could kind of, gather up lots of herbs just by leaving the game running, which similar to building up stamina just by standing still. It doesn't really make sense in a turn-based game. But every 3 seconds, it goes through and looks at the ecology tables, comes up with a random cell, and then if it is grass, it might grow one of the herbs there, or change it. And that system could be extended a lot, and I had some plans for that, but I didn't do that. What else? There was going to be maybe companions. You could have people follow you around, sort of one tile behind you, like if you were going to rescue someone or something. So yeah, I think that covers it. I just wanted to cover that before I unsubscribed from Game Salad. I built a bunch of games in Game Salad, Rad Skater, or Red Skater Apocalypse, Pulp Diction, and B Grade Renegade, and also this game. And now I'm going to be using Unity full time. So I just wanted to make a bit of a record of how all that worked for my dev diaries. Thank you and goodbye.